Please welcome Martin Miles, Sitecore MVP.
Thank you. Seven hours. 7 hours of only 220 hours I spent for going through all these issues, uncertain issues. One runtime error after another, again and again. My name is Martin Miles, and today I will take you through the insights learned from my strugglings while performing Sitecore Upgrade. We'll go through tools, tactics, and approaches to updating content, database configuration, and of course containers. Also, there is lots of material covered in this presentation, and I try to fit it into the allocated time. I will do my best too, at least. And all the material covered in the session I reference in my blog post, which I will show after the presentation. Let me ask you a question. Raise your hands who did Sitecore Upgrades. Wow. I'm pretty sure I will still learn something from this presentation, regardless. So let's start with the reasons why do we do Sitecore Upgrade. The answer is simple. This is carrot and a stick motivation. Every new year, mainstream support expires for one or few versions. That means Sitecore still provides security updates and fixes, but they do not support development and compatibility queries. That was a stick. Speaking about the carrot, companies upgrade due to new features or to some new experience. For example, with the latest 10.2, you can use Next.js to statically render MVC to HTML and incrementally convert the MVC application to GSS app. This opens the door to modern opportunities for many legacy MVC sites. And having the latest version is especially valuable in front of composable DXP, parts of which will already take place. We will be talking a lot about decomposable today and tomorrow. Proper planning is the key to success, but how do we perform planning? First of all, we need to assess the solution. Upgrading vanilla Sitecore would cost you minimal efforts, but with more custom code, you would expect more labor to do that. Any technical debts or issues, this will affect your timescale, it will impose additional risks, so it's better to know in advance. If you get an access to any of existing documentation, that would be a perfect place to start, and it will likely give some answers to the previous question. Find the details about all the environments, code, branches, and which code branch is deployed to which environment. Also, you'll be interested in the details about existing CI/CD pipelines. Find the custom configuration made into the Sitecore. I will explain later how to do that. And finally, talk to stakeholders. Who, if not your stakeholders, are mostly interested in the success of an upgrade? It sounds logically that more versions you jump through, the more complicated upgrade process is. However, that's not a rule of thumb. Some versions have very minor changes and could be updated just with minimal efforts, while others, the opposite, they could be as difficult as the hell. This is the exact reason 9.3 stands out of this version chain. It happened that it took most of breaking changes and deprecations and internal housekeeping improvements than any other version did. One of the most valuable planning activities is studying release notes for every single version you jump through on your path. Pay special care to these two sections, which are deprecated, removes, and breaking changes. Also identify the functionalities which are no more supported. That includes any third-party, add-ons, libraries, whatever, and find their alternatives. Also, with new platform features, license file format, it changes with time. So even with most permissive license, your old license file may still not be incompatible with newer platform. So this, for example, happened when version 9 was released. Who knows, maybe it happens in future. So it's good to care about it in advance, and because the process takes some time, so please check that with your account manager. When it comes to upgrades, there are two primary approaches. The first is upgrading existing instances, which the upgrade is applied to all the environments and executed on every existing instances. And another is clean approach, where we create a clean environment and Sitecore instances, then we move data and fix the compatibility issues. For development environments in upgrade scenario, my preference is always to start with a clean vanilla instance of a target Sitecore version. Every solution is unique. Same applies to your team. Estimates might consider these factors along with the previous or relevant experience which your team may have. This diagram shows a very optimistic view on a team of 2 experienced Sitecore professionals performing the upgrade in 4 typical sprints. While sharing the pool of tasks between each other, one of them is primarily focused on the code base, while another more cares about DevOps type of things. And once again, this is not a guidance, nor any sort of assessment. This is just a high-level view on team activities through the sprints. So before heading to upgrade tactics, let's quickly recap some upgrade tools we did have over the time and how they did perform. This diagram shows that at every single time there was an official upgrade solution for the existing instances. In a lift and shift, you can use Sitecore Express migration tool to move over the data from your old instances to the new one. It supports to migrate from previous old instances of to Sitecore 9 initial version, and this migration tool copies items and files from one Sitecore instance at a time. Update Center was introduced in 9.0, Update 2, and is valid up to 10.1. You can find download, install, and manage updates, also hotfixes for the Sitecore platform and Sitecore modules. The Update Center accesses the package management service provided by Sitecore, or you can install and provide the service yourself. So in that case, you need to change connection string. Next, let's talk about some update tactics that can significantly help your upgrade process. So fixing the state is being able to switch between the states as quick as possible is very crucial for productivity when working on instance upgrade. Small mistakes are inevitable, and we actually need some sort of undo button for the whole process. We already have this for the code base, Git, with its ability of switching between branches. But what about publish site? What about indexes, certificates, and all that minors that matter? Every database backups are not that fast, straightforward as you would like it to be. What comes into your mind is fixing the whole state of that working machine, something that virtual machine can do. And the first tool that comes into my mind is Hyper-V, of course Hyper-V. First of all, it's free, it's included with every Windows Pro. It's extremely fast with solid-state drives. It has maximal operation system integration, move backups between hosts. So it's really proven with this type of activity. Also, networking options, perfect. You can do different type of routing, remote management, virtual drives. The only concern that when you work with Hyper-V, it takes a lot of space. And you might consider at least 1 terabyte solid-state drive. Otherwise, it will go as soon as possible. So now we are confident with the reverting bad things quickly, but how about redoing successful steps? With lots of repetitive actions, one could lose very much of valuable time for things they have to redo again and again and again. So let's think someone spent last 2 hours for upgrading NuGet packages. Then, let's say 100 projects in a solution. And last minute something went totally wrong, so the person had to restore a virtual machine. That takes less than a minute. Fine. But should they repeat these monotonous steps again and again? It would be much better solution for scripting these activities rather than manually doing. So you can leverage PowerShell for different sort of activities, automation, tasks, jobs. This is my favorite actually, must replace configuration files and code with regular expression. One-liner, you will see it later in the slides. Backup restore database, easy. Managing infrastructure, that's what PowerShell was created for. If you are lucky to have Sitecore PowerShell extension with remoting that gives you the ultimate control over your instance. So you do manage content, you can apply any security, do any security changes, publishing, you can reindex. So whatever you can do by UI, you can do with Sitecore PowerShell extension, you could be able to do from the outside PowerShell console. In some cases, when you are performing a jump to a following version, or maybe just few, and your solution is relatively simple and close to vanilla, it makes sense to pitch proof of concept. This will either give you a quick win, or if not, at least identify the traps and things that you can improve. And ideally, that should be a one-day job for a single professional, not longer than that. It's also highly desirable if you can obtain a recent backup of a master database. I do realize it's not always possible, sometimes due to the large volume of content or because, more likely, organization security policy, especially for the external contractors who do this job. But why do you need this master database? First of all, you restore it alone with your old solution to verify the code you obtained does and work exactly the same as on the published website. This gives you some sort of certainty. Next, you will update and you will use this database with a new solution instance to ensure that it also looks and works exactly as it performed before. Upgrade process takes decent amount of time, and it may be a case where a new Sitecore version released meanwhile you are doing this upgrade. And my best advice would be to stick to the newer version. First of all, it may be not an easy task to do, especially if you are working for a partner rather than to the end client, and versions have been signed off. It will take lots of efforts to persuade stakeholders to consider that, and you will have to motivate your arguments pretty well. Upgrading the solution while you are halfway done adds some time, but it will cost time less than upgrading once you went live. This is what exactly happened to me while working on 10.0 update 1, and newer 10.1 got released. So switching to 10.1 actually cost me less effort because of its new update features, rather than I would stay with the original version. And last but not the least, please take this advice seriously, despite it might be obvious. Document every minor steps, decisions, solutions, because you will likely to go through that again, and maybe several times again. Saves your scripts either, because you will need them. Even better job would be done if you could wrap all your findings into a blog post and share the challenge and solutions with the rest of the world. Because our blogs are indexed, and you'll help too many other people. Several times in my career, I managed to Google my own blog post with the solution when I was looking for a challenge, facing a challenge. And actually, thanks to the previously taken notes, this presentation became possible. Right. When asking my colleagues what was the biggest challenge with their upgrade experience, almost everyone responded migrating the content. But before migrating the content, depending on your level of ownership, of course, it might be a good idea to undertake content maintenance. Most of these options, however, are helpful, but still optional. So you may remove legacy item versions. Once I faced 529 versions of home item. Pretty nice. I don't think they need them all. Remove unused media. Those take large of space from databases. Optionally, take care of broken links. And this one is more interesting. Align solution Helix folders with your out of the box. I will explain it. So speaking about Helix folders, from 9.1 default Helix folders, they come out of the box. And they have known universal IDs. But before that, Helix solutions were done earlier, and they have similar paths, but with folder IDs that do not match those coming out of the box from 9.1. And you will likely to have lots of serialized items, which will be serialized under incorrect parent ID. So you would need to revoke the serialization to match the correct folders coming from out of the box. Okay, migration. This is the default way of occasional exchanging items between instances, known to every developer, so I'm pretty sure everyone uses Sitecore packaging. However, it's extremely slow. It does not work with large volumes, especially 100 megabytes. Legacy interface, which comes from version 6, I believe, or maybe even earlier. So works synchronously, not the best solution. This one is much better. It is free. It has content migrator module using Rainbow, and it copies items between instances in a multi-threaded way. That's why it's super fast. Keep in mind that both servers should have this Sidekick migrator installed. Razzle is an official tool used for database comparison. It offers quite intelligent way of copying items between servers, but however, it's not free and it requires license, so not many people use it. PowerShell content migrator, which was done by Michael West, who is maintainer of the PowerShell extension. It's quite fast. It's probably the fastest one. I tried that myself several times, and it did perfect job. This is probably the most simple, but people don't use it. This is a built-in tool to copy items between the databases, just from your Sitecore control panel. The way to make it work is just to plug the target database as an external database to a Sitecore instance so that it becomes seen in Sitecore. And then you'll be able to copy items between databases in both ways. Well, however, it's quite limited functionality it has, and it's reasonably slow. And if you are upgrading to 10.1 or newer, there is a better approach. We'll talk later about it. There are a few options to transfer users and roles from one instance to another. And you can use either standard package designer, so that you can add the roles and users that you would like to package up and install on target instance. You can also use serialization. Users' roles will be serialized under the serialization security folder, so that you can copy these files serialized from one instance to another, and that would work. Then you will revert. The problem is that both these options, they do not transfer you the passwords. So the password is either reset to some random value when you use a package, or it will have default value of B when you use serialization. So how do we deal with the passwords in that case? You can either reset the password for the users manually using User Manager application, or users can reset the password by forgot your password option from the login screen. But in that case, please make sure that you have mail server configured. Otherwise, they will not receive the email. There is also transfer user password admin tool to transfer the password from source and to target database. But you need to have a corresponding connection strings and, of course, access to those destinations. Without having required access, of course, you can migrate manually from SQL. Roles and users, they are stored in SQL core database, and you are mostly interested in the selected tables. And also, after 9.1, membership could be extracted from core database into its own isolated security database, which will be a good pattern. So the biggest and the most challenging part of upgrade is, of course, upgrading the code base. So let's start with very helpful tricks that will help you identify the customization for a given project. Okay, so in order to estimate the amount of customization for solution, I do the following trick. First of all, I need to have a vanilla version of a Sitecore that existing solution is using. So after it's up and running, I come to webroot and do git init. And then I commit everything. No worries, it's just a local git. It initialized at the webroot, so I do not push it everywhere. And I delete these git files immediately after the exercise. So next, I build the code base as normal, and I publish these artifacts above the vanilla Sitecore into the web root. And finally, my Git tool of choice shows the entire delta of all the customizations for that solution. With that trick, I could also easily see web config transforms, and I can also see mismatching or altered DLLs, for example, provided with hotfixes, which have the same name. This trick gives me an overall feel of how much the instance varies from the vanilla one. And with previous trick, mostly aims showing the overall amount of customization. This one would be more specific about the changes into configuration. So it shows the patches and config alteration done on top of vanilla instance so that more precise estimation could be done. So from the previous step, we already have vanilla Sitecore. What we need to do is run ShowConfig. We generate the combined configuration, and we save it into XML file. Next, we do once again the same trick, but against the existing instance, and also save it to XML file. Now, having an actual solution configuration, we can compare it against vanilla combined configuration for the same version of the platform using a diff tool. I personally recommend Beyond Compare, but you may use different. So for your convenience, you could extract the whole delta between both into a single config file, and it will be a valid patch file. You may also find, after upgrading your instance, some sort of dependency hell in terms of referenced assemblies not playing well with each other. This can take ages to fix. Every Sitecore release contains assembly list, featuring all the list of assemblies shipped with this particular release. For example, the version 10.2 has 400 exactly DLLs shipped within its bin folder. DLLs must exactly match counterpart vanilla DLLs in versions, and also in size unless that is hotfix. With the previous trick, you could identify all those mismatching DLLs, and with second trick, where these DLLs are coming from. You may also perform a solution-wide search for specific faulty assembly, and then see all the found results along with their size in bytes. And at least one would mismatch. That's the one to blame. It will point you to a specific project where the faulty one is coming from. And of course, my favorite tool, PowerShell with regular expression. You may use it to update a large number of references, especially 100 or something like that. This issue occurs due to dependencies used at your solution project that mismatch those DLLs versions that are actually shipped with vanilla Sitecore. So for example, your feature module uses Sitecore MVC dependency, which then relies to system.web.mvc. When you add Sitecore MVC using NuGet package manager, it pulls the latest dependency, but not the one that was latest by the time when this Sitecore version was released. So you, of course, can add the library ignoring the dependency and process with the correct version of that dependency, which you will get from the official assembly list manually. Or you can adjust particular assembly binding to the latest version. And since you should not modify web config by your hands, it should be done by config transforms. So you may employ config transform step as a part of your local build and deploy this script. Situation has improved with 10.1, as the libraries have been updated to the latest version, and these bindings became less strict. So you might know that Sitecore no longer ships no reference NuGet packages. So for example, when installing 10.2 packages, you will get lots of dependencies installed. If you select the one, it's not what we want. And the correct way in this case would be using dependency behavior option for the NuGet package manager. So choosing the dependency behavior to ignore dependencies will only install the package without any of dependencies. And of course, you can use this function from the PowerShell. There is a parameter switch available to do exactly the same. Just like project-to-project references and assembly references, package references are managed directly within the project, rather than using a separate package config file. So this is a new format, and it's highly recommended to upgrade, despite you don't oblige to, but it's better to. And unlike packages config, package reference list only those NuGet packages that you directly install into a project. Using package reference, the packages are maintained in a global packages folder, or sometimes called cache folder. As we did before, where the packages were stored in solution root. So you may have several solutions, and that duplicates the amount of the same libraries. And also MS-build allows you conditional reference in NuGet packages. This is also a benefit. So in my supporting blog post, I left reference to the PowerShell script that will migrate large solutions from old formats to package references. 4.9 is the terminal version of .NET framework. So it's been used from 9.3 onwards, but migrating from all earlier solutions will require you to update target framework for every project within solution. I personally prefer doing that, guess where, in PowerShell, with one-liner, but there is a target framework migrator. This is extension to Visual Studio that also allow bulk updates of target framework for the whole solution. And of course, to benefit from the extension you may want to use for upgrading target framework, you need to upgrade Visual Studio. And last but most important is that Visual Studio build tool is what you mandatory need to get updated to benefit from the latest target framework. Solution you're upgrading, it may reference some third-party libraries that are discontinued. In that case, you need to do investigation for each of these libraries and decide what to do. So I came across this particular library that performed geospatial search. It has source code available, fine, but it's not updated for the 5 years. Meanwhile, Lucene search has been removed entirely from Sitecore, and this library became no longer relevant. So it had reference Lucene, what should I do? As an outcome, the whole related business feature was temporarily descoped to be rewritten with Solar spatial search instead. Microsoft Dependency Injection became a build one from version 8.2. It's fast, reliable, it does everything you need. Just use that one. Simple. This one, a big topic. You will need to upgrade Glass Mapper to version 5, unless you're already done. So there's lots of changes. Package's naming has been changed. Now it reflects the version of Sitecore which it is working with, and it comes in 3 related packages. Glass has lots of changes in version 5, most significant of which would be a new way of accessing content from Sitecore. Instead of iSitecore context, use the new MVC. You will be using new iMVC context, iRequest context, and even iWebForms context. I don't know who will be using that. Glass controller has gone. You just inherit from normal controller. Similar happened to Glass View. You just simply receive your model as you normally do with MVC. Lazy loads is now default for Glass Mapper. And the last one is quite interesting. After upgrading Glass, I faced a bunch of runtime errors, which were so difficult to identify. Like I spent more than a day to troubleshoot that. And eventually I realized that it all happened due to a lack of virtual property modifiers in the model classes. But with old Glass Mapper, the model properties still map correctly, even without virtual modifier. So, not any longer. This is a nice tip, by the way. If you do upgrade Glass Mapper using NuGet packages, make sure app start classes are not get overwritten by the default, and they are only exist in your foundation module, not in the feature models. Sitecore try to reduce breaking changes where they are possible, but sometimes they are unavoidable. So with all Sitecore updates, there is some code coming that needs to get updated because it's not simply compatible. So this is a good example. HTTP request argument had context property, which has been removed in favor of HTTP context. So in fact, they just simply renamed it. It results with breaking change for all the custom pipeline processes, which you all need to rewrite. And of course, I used my preferred approach of PowerShell regular expression. This is one-liner. I just ran against the solution and it upgraded it universally wherever it happens. But of course, be careful. So use diff tools not to override something that you did not intend to. There's another change: custom processes which patched into a pipeline. Now they require mandatory attribute resolve. I made it bold. It will break without it. Also, link manager got a new way of passing the default options. This is another change from 9.3. So long story short, the internals have been written to the best and mostly hidden from our eyes. So what we need to know is the updated way of patching the default URL options, which now looks more elegant. The solution I was upgrading had a publish and event configuration that intended to do HTML cache clearing for different site instances. Since 9.3, again 9.3, this behavior became default after a publish. So it actually works the other way around now. You have to disable HTML cache clearing explicitly if you need to. So previous code will break and you have to remove the whole section, but you may configure that at the side node, like that. So when upgrading the legacy solution, you will likely to come across some of those. Sitecore support addresses issues with providing support DLLs, and of course they do release hotfixes. Each of them sort out some certain issue which you need to investigate and find out if it was resolved in the version you're upgrading to. So you need to use this 6-digit support code to find more details about what is being used for, and you do that by searching Sitecore knowledge base website. They have wonderful search in the top right corner, which immediately gives you the answer. And when it comes to hotfixes, those keep original name of the same DLL that they are replaced, so it's difficult to identify. But what you can do, you just go to properties and you get the hotfix number from that. SXA isn't an integral part of platform, so it has own upgrade guidance. They release it along with each version, so I only touch it briefly. So as it stays true for the rest of Sitecore platform, the biggest SXA change took place with the release 9.3. And the biggest was the deprecation of a velocity library. Now they use script and templates, which are much better. But that, of course, affects all your rendering variants, which is the most powerful feature of SXA, again, in my opinion. Also, from 9.3, SXA has a version parity to the platform it's been deployed to. Web forms for marketers. Thanks God they were deprecated in 9.1. But there is a community build tool to help converting all these legacy forms and submitted data into Sitecore experience form. So that is a console application that migrates saved forms data from SQL database or maybe from Mongo database, depending which you were using, to the destination Sitecore Forms SQL database. So both Lucene and Azure Search, now they became obsolete and removed. Please migrate your solution to Solr. It might, of course, take significant efforts, but you don't have a choice. Consider user search stack. It cares of installation, failover security, maintenance, scaling, all that type of things. Managing Solar allows you as developer to implement faster and spend more time focused on building better search experience rather than supporting the infrastructure. And speaking about Solar, there were two issues I had to resolve while upgrading Solar. First was related to core names mismatching index name. It's not a big deal, it can be fixed by this patch. And the second relates to a configuration that defines all index. So now if you are indexing all the fields, that must be wrapped with document option tag of correct type. After introduction of XConnect, there was a question. So what do we do with the data from existing analytics which we have in Mongo? So how do we upgrade that to 9 or maybe to version 10? And to address that, Sitecore created a tool called XDB Migrator, which works on top of the data exchange framework. So it reads from MongoDB and writes to the XConnect server. This tool uses custom collection models to be deployed with both XConnect service and with XConnect indexer service. After rebuilding XDB search, that index, you will get the data coming to experience profile. So optionally, it has a verification feature, which is in fact a standalone database. So if you use it, it gets all the records of each entity being submitted to XConnect. May be helpful just for monitoring purposes. And when jumping through the high number of versions, you will definitely face lots of Sitecore DLLs and APIs that are being deprecated. I just listed only a few of them. Sadly, deprecation will require you either rewriting the code that consumes those or just eliminate it. So question to audience. Raise your hands who are using containers in current project. Not much. Right, let's talk through containers then. Containers are immutable. That means any changes to file system within container, they all will be lost as soon as container restarts. And container do restart. With Docker, you no longer need to deploy just your application code. Container itself, so actually image, is now the unit of deployment, which includes the whole environment, operation system, application dependencies, all that. Therefore, your build process will have to be extended to build Docker containers and push them to container registry. The good news is that your code base remains the same. There are minor changes, of course, but debugging changes a little bit. You now need to attach to specific container and look for the process and attach to that one. What else? Instead of publishing artifacts into web folder, we now build image and run the container from that image. So databases. Previously, they were not compatible between the versions. And previously, one had to run an upgrade script against core and master in order to attach both to vanilla target instance and then to progress with the rest of upgrade. So this upgrade script ensures the schema and default out-of-the-box content gets updated, applying the intermediate changes between both versions. So the idea came to the minds that supplying empty databases with vanilla platform would eliminate the above needs for everyone who upgrades database to operate at the SQL admin level. But every version, it has a unique set of default items, so where do we keep these items? And because of container-first way of thinking, there was a clear need storing those somewhere on a file system level. So it was a matter of choosing adopting suitable data provider, and Protobuf from Google, that was chosen, and that was a perfect choice. It's ticking all the boxes, and moreover, it's very major technology. I heard about it probably 10 years ago. So with that in mind, now having a database full of content You can upgrade to a newer version without even touching it. SQL databases stay up to date, and the rest of the default content get updates by just substituting protobuf data resource files. Sitecore calls this approach items as resources. And I also would recommend you looking into items as resources plugin. This is quite new one. It's coming with Sitecore CLI from the version 4. And you can create protobuf files yourself that contain all your items and bake them directly into your container images. Right, but now how do we upgrade, let's say, 8.2 databases to 10.2? So since Sitecore 10.1 and onwards, databases come with no content, and it becomes a matter of removing the default items from SQL database, leaving the rest of content untouched. That default content would come from the actual item resource files, which will instead be placed into update folder. And if you are updating after 10.1, it comes purely to replacing these resource files, while it naturally fits container file system, so you don't even touch your database with content. And new tool comes into play, Sitecore Update Up tool, which updates core, master, and web databases. You must download the app and use the version of the tool that is appropriate for the version and topology that you are upgrading from, not to, but from. So it also helps with official modules resources for upgrading core, master, web. I know it works with SXA, of course PowerShell extension, data exchange framework, Horizon, both CRM connectors, all that type of things. And then with all that in mind, the question comes, how do we containerize our own module? And to containerize modules, we now use Sitecore asset images instead of package as we did before. So first of all, if you try to install a package to your container Sitecore, you will not be able to. Of course, if that package contains DLL, because the bin folder is been now restricted. Of course, you can go into interactive mode, then you can grant permissions to your IS user, and in that case, you will be able to put DLL, but that's not the right way of doing things. And of course, secondly, containers are immutable, and they are assumed to be killed, reinstantiated, so will you do that again? So these images are in fact storage of your model's assets in the relevant folders based on the smallest Windows image, which is nanosever. You can create those manually, as I show this on the diagram. With recent platform, there are two ways of managing the items. Either you create an item resources files, or you can convert your module package zip file into a web deploy package. Then you need to extract DACPack file from that web deploy, and then you place it into database folder. So you basically choose either of these two. And the rest of the files for your model will be the same regardless of the way you choose. So you'll definitely have some statics like DLLs, configs, maybe some JavaScript, styles, wherever. You will have Docker file from Windows nanosever. If you are doing something with search, you will probably supply Solr schema for the course. And you may also put a PowerShell script into tools folder that does some logic when you need it to happen. But there is a tool called Docker Asset Image Creator, and tomorrow its author, Robert Hawk, will show it in action. If you want to, you can stick to his session. And probably the final block, testing and going live. How do we test an upgrade? Regression testing is definitely the thing you need to do. So the question is what to test. You must ensure at least the following. So overall site, health, it looks and feel, it all is as it was before. Please do check third-party integrations. They are not broken, they are supplying the data and doing it perfectly well. Also editing experience. This is what people sometimes miss out from the testing. make sure it works. And also, it's good to go through most recent tasks from maybe some few previous sprints just to make sure those changes been picked up and went into your upgrade. Another question, whether you do it manual or automated, it's to decide up to you, because without automation, you will spend lots of efforts. If you want to automate, that you cannot automate everything. There are lots of tools, some Selenium wrappers or different on the market that you can think about, but that's your own homework, so you can do it yourself. Also, monitoring is crucial when going live. At least you must inspect all your logs for any suspicious or criminal activity, exceptions, and you also watch the metrics. Another testing you may want to do would be load testing, just to make sure that there are no significant delays or loads which your new solution brings comparing to the previous one. And we're nearly done going live. If you haven't established CI/CD pipelines, you will have to. Nothing goes without that. You need to do security hardening. There is a guide which Sitecore supplies for doing that. You will need to do content freeze. If you have this luxury of having content freeze for this period, wonderful. If not, then you'll need to pick up the delta between when you start deployment and what your content author has been creating. Since you do, you can use PowerShell extension to find all this delta and package. Switch DNS is the actual moment when your new website goes live and the old website goes offline. And there's one trick you might want to do, is you must ensure that TTL values been reduced to the minimum. You need to do that in advance. And once you are successful with migration, you need to revert them back. Once done, you have a maturing period. So probably 2 weeks, maybe a month, where 2 instances will work in parallel. This is kind of restore point. So again, if something happens, you will lose part of content, but you will not get the downtime. All the information I showed and the scripts, references is on my blog post, and I will be updating this blog post with time, so there will be even more coming into it. Please welcome. And if you need my socials, if you want to raise the questions offline, you're welcome to. These are my contacts. Thank you very much.